I've gotten to experience 2 trips to the brand new Cedar Boardwalk. And while I only have one ride on the brand new Wild Mouse coaster in the park, each ride is different, so it doesn't really matter. This section has changed this area of the park forever, so it is deserving of its own review. Here's my full review of the Boardwalk section, the Grand Pavilion, and of course, Cedar Point's 18th coaster, Wild Mouse. Let's first start with the overall area review. This does not include the Pavilion or Wild Mouse, but instead the overall aesthetic of the area and also the nearby flat rides. There are 6 flat rides in this area of the park: Windseeker, Giant Wheel, Troika, Calypso, Matterhorn, and Atomic Scrambler. Let's start with as you're walking in. From either of the 2 entrances to this new boardwalk stands a very classic 60s style boardwalk sign. On the right entrance, Gatekeeper stands behind the sign, and on the left, Wild Mouse stands behind the sign. This whole area has a super welcoming vibe. You can tell it's a new section, but the whole area goes for a more classic vibe with older trash cans, signs, and even the rides are more fairground boardwalk style rides. The flat rides in the area aren't anything special, but they are good enough to stick around for more than just Wild Mouse. Calypso and Atomic Scrambler are always fun, Troika has some good negatives, Giant Wheel and Windseeker provide some great views of the park, and while I don't like Matterhorn, I know a lot of people do. In addition to all of these new rides and new concrete in a part of the park that needed it most, there is also a few new pathways. There is an expanded pathway from Calypso up to the Wild Mouse entrance and Grand Pavilion, and a brand new path that juts off to the left to connect up with the Windseeker gate. As of the time of recording, there are not a lot of plants in yet, but there is enough to look nice. The area over by the new path is completely empty, but I'm sure it'll look fantastic over time when the plants do grow in. The simple but pretty shrubbery makes this area look a lot nicer than it did before. Really quick, here is a before and after of a few different places around the area. You can see the whole area looks a lot brighter, more inviting, and overall just a better section. Even the trash cans are bright. That brings me to the final point: this section is very bright. The concrete is white, the signs are extremely colorful, Wild Mouse pops with an orange and yellow color scheme, all with the sun shining off Lake Erie right next door. It makes this section look better than it already did. So if you couldn't tell, I really like this area as a whole. Now let's talk about the centerpiece of the area, the Grand Pavilion. I'm saying that this is my favorite building in the entire park. There is literally only one thing about this massive building that I am not a fan of, and that is the entrance into it. The main entrance to the pavilion is right behind the Giant Wheel. As you walk in the door, straight ahead is a small step up into the actual pavilion. The bottom level is a lot more congested compared to up top, which is why I don't really like it. It's a couple of small walkways leading around the incredible restaurant. The restaurant is one of the best in the park. They have seasoned steak fries, great fried shrimp and fish, chicken tenders for the pickier eaters, and sides like noodles and salads. It's a great restaurant in that area of the park that doesn't really have a main restaurant unless you count Melt. The downstairs level also has 2 patios, which is excellent on a hot day. In a park where almost all the seating is outdoors, having 2 covered patios, which overlook the beautiful section and Lake Erie, is a welcome addition. This is the main eating area, but you can also eat upstairs. You can ascend from right next to either one of the patios or the main stairs into the upstairs area, which is much more open and grand. On the left side is the snack bar, serving small pizzas and pretzel bites, just some traditional snacks. In the middle is the massive bar, a welcome addition to the adults of Cedar Point. On a hot day, this is where the adults will relax as the kids run around the park. This is also where you'll find the stained glass Tony was talking about. In addition to the bar upstairs, there are a ton of comfy seats that are heavily cushioned. On the right side of this upstairs section is the very modern bathrooms, which have unique sinks. But my favorite part of the whole pavilion that really hits home the welcoming vibe of this area is that it has 3 different balconies. The first is the Gatekeeper deck. This overlooks Gatekeeper and its plaza and also some of Lake Erie. This is the quietest of the balconies and is also my favorite. My second favorite is the Lake Erie deck. This is the largest of the balconies and overlooks Lake Erie. This is probably the best place to relax, eat some great food, have a drink, or just enjoy the waves. Finally, the busiest is the Wild Mouse patio. This overlooks the park's newest coaster and also has Dragster, Millennium Force, and Valraven in the distance that you can watch. You can also look down on the lakeside path and the main part of the beach at the hotel. So if you're looking to eat some good food, grab a drink, or just relax, the Grand Pavilion is the best place for that. It has the nicest interior and a pretty cool exterior that looks modern and classic at the same time and has an extremely welcoming vibe. I highly recommend stopping by. Now we're on to Wild Mouse. Because Wild Mouse compared to other coasters I've reviewed on this channel is so much smaller, I'm not going into any categories, but I will walk through the experience. Let's dive in. After walking through the very colorful entrance, you enter the queue. Now I know everyone is complaining that the queue isn't covered, and while that is true and may be pretty upsetting on a hot summer day, just remember that there is an open fence with Lake Erie right behind it. You're getting that Lake Erie breeze and temperature, so I was actually very cold even if it was around 65 degrees on opening day and sunny. The queue is short with not a lot to look at except for the train names in the very beginning. Speaking of which, the trains are Ziggy, Zaggy, Chase, Maisie, Dizzy, Larry, which we all call the problem child because that was the car we got evacuated from, and of course the cheese car. After the pretty quick wait, because while the line doesn't move far, it moves a lot as trains dispatch around every 25 seconds, you climb up the stairs and board your train. You may be sitting with someone else, which brings up the next comment. Cedar Point, if you're watching this video, please consider adding a single rider line. Staff members are constantly calling up single riders, so a single rider line on this ride would be very appreciated. You board your 4 cross cars and sit down in the very low seats. The seats are low and the lap bars sit higher up on your waist because of that, but the lap bars are very comfortable, which can help with some of the spinning transitions. Something to note, if you want a more aggressive ride, you should make sure the weight balance of the car is uneven. Put smaller people on one side and bigger people on the other for a crazier ride. If you don't want that ride, sit in the middle of the car or balance the weight. This ride is different every time, so depending on weight, you'll get different experiences. Exit the station and climb up the 52-foot tall lift hill and turn left, where you will start spinning immediately. Almost every ride will have you facing towards the hotel for your drop, which is pretty exciting as you'll be falling backward. This is one of my favorite moments on the ride. The drop isn't very large, but it starts spinning off. Because you'll be facing unpredictable directions for the duration of the ride, it makes the smallest elements the most exciting. After the drop, you hopefully fly past the first block break, unlike us on our first ride, and enter 2 switchback turns. These are traditional Wild Mouse turns, but can get you spinning pretty fast, especially that second turn. These aren't intense or anything, but this is where you'll get the dizziest. Just be careful, as these turns, depending on your direction, can thrust you into the restraints or the rider next to you. The most picturesque turn on Wild Mouse is up next, which is one of the spinnier turns and will lead you into the overbank, which is my favorite element. There are a few negatives, especially if you're facing upward on the ride. This leads into the twister portion, where the ride turns left and quickly transitions to the right. While you're spinning in this section, you have no idea where you are located or what's next, it's just pure fun. Not intense, not forceful, but dizzying and fun. The riders drop down with an unnoticeable head chopper before diving into the last block zone. Trains absolutely fly through this block zone, and most trains are facing backwards for this, so the final turn on the ride may again thrust you into the restraint if you are not prepared. Finally, riders rotate into the final brake run of the ride with an extremely smooth stop. Overall, Wild Mouse is an excellent addition to the park. Cedar Point's only family coasters were Mine Ride and Iron Dragon, and kind of Gemini. Mine Ride is a rough ride, and Gemini may not be the best family coaster, so the only thing left is Iron Dragon. Wild Mouse is a super unique coaster to the area, and is a great family coaster for Cedar Point that will definitely bring in the crowds. And unlike Mine Ride, this ride is one of the smoothest coasters I've ridden. While some transitions may be a little jarring with the random rotations, it's nothing too bad. The worst part about the ride is going to be the lines. Also, for those complaining about the duration, it's not really a concern on the ride because you are so disoriented from the spinning, you're not really paying attention to the length. I give Wild Mouse a 7 out of 10. It's not too forceful, but it is definitely wild and very fun. The Boardwalk section is one of my favorite sections in the park. It has a modern and classic feel at the same time with a fantastic centerpiece and a good new roller coaster. I highly recommend visiting this park for the new section alone. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment what you think of the Boardwalk and have a great rest of your day.